All right, get ready because today we are going deep into something you all asked for, specifically stress.
Stress, yes.
You guys want to understand it better, learn how to cope, and maybe even learn to thrive because of it. And let me tell you, based on this episode of the Fluent English Podcast, the one you sent over called Stress, Understanding, Coping, and Thriving in a Hectic World, there's so much more to stress than just feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, for sure.
For example, did you know that stress actually helped our ancestors survive?
Yeah, it's true. If you think about it, you're on the savannah and suddenly a lion appears.
Oh, gosh.
That rush of fear, that energy you would feel, that's stress. That's the thing that pushed our ancestors to either fight that lion or run away.
Fast. Okay, yeah, a lion would definitely trigger a stress response, but I've heard that whole fight or flight thing before. What's actually happening in our bodies when that gets triggered? What's going on?
Well, the podcast we're looking at define stress as the body's natural reaction to, well, any demand or threat, really. It's like our internal alarm system is going off. It's prepping us for action. And, you know, it sets off this whole chain reaction in our bodies, starting with hormones, those hormones you mentioned earlier, adrenaline and cortisol.
Wait, so you're saying that feeling we get when we're, racing to meet a deadline or dealing with a family crisis, that's actually a hormonal cascade?
Exactly. And it can show up physically, too, like your heart starts pounding, your palms get all sweaty, your muscles tense up. You know, it's all designed to give you that burst of energy and focus you need to either face the challenge head on or just escape it altogether.
That makes sense, but I've also heard that not all stress is created equal, right? So what's the difference between acute versus chronic stress? I feel like that distinction is important, but I'm a little fuzzy on the specifics.
You're right. It's a super important difference. Think of it this way. Acute stress, that's like a sprint.
Okay.
It's intense,
yeah,
but it's short-lived. You know, like the nervous energy you might feel before giving a presentation.
Right.
But chronic stress, oh, that's a different story. That's like running a marathon, but without any training. It's that constant, never-ending pressure from ongoing issues like maybe work overload, financial worries, or problems with relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And just like a marathon, it can really damage your body and your mind if you're not prepared.
Okay, that's actually a really helpful analogy, the sprint versus the marathon.
Yeah.
So chronic stress is essentially when that fight or flight response is just stuck on, right? It can't turn off.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a switch that's jammed.
Right.
And the effects, they're huge. It's not just about feeling a bit frazzled. It goes way deeper than that.
Yeah.
It impacts your overall health in some pretty big ways.
So, what's actually happening inside us when we're dealing with chronic stress? It can't be.
No, it's not good at all.
Yeah.
Think about it, okay? Your heart's racing all the time. Your blood pressure is high. That constant strain, it wears down your cardiovascular system over time.
Oh, wow.
Then there's all that muscle tension. That often leads to chronic pain, especially in your neck and shoulders, And even your gut bacteria, this is wild, even your gut bacteria can get thrown off balance because of chronic stress.
Wait, gut bacteria? Seriously? I knew stress could, mess with your stomach, but I had no idea it could, impact your gut health.
It's true, though, and it's a really fascinating area of research. It turns out there's this powerful connection between your gut and your brain. And stress. Stress plays a major role in that whole relationship.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so we're talking about physical effects here, but what about the impact on our minds? I imagine chronic stress isn't exactly good for mental clarity or emotional stability.
You're absolutely right. Chronic stress, it can totally mess with your mental and emotional well-being. That feeling of always being worried and on edge it can turn into full-blown anxiety disorders. And the constant pressure, that can lead to depression and even impair your cognitive function. Yeah. Think about those times when you just can't focus, or you struggle to make a decision, or you can't even remember things clearly. That's stress messing with your brain.
Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that brain fog before. And oh, the irritability. Don't even get me started. The irritability that comes with being stressed is not a joke. Snapping at people, feeling impatient all the time, it totally impacts how we interact with, like, everyone around us.
Exactly. It affects not only our internal world, but also our relationships and our overall well-being. It's a big deal.
Okay. Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground already. And honestly, it's a little heavy. I mean, I know I'm not alone in, like, experiencing these effects of stress, but I'm curious to understand what actually causes it in the first place, you know? Like, where does it all come from?
Well, it's important to remember that everyone experiences stress differently. What might send one person into a tailspin might not even phase someone else. It's really personal. But there are some common culprits that we can explore that tend to trigger stress for a lot of people.
Perfect. Let's unpack those stressors in part 2 of our deep dive.
So, let's get into some of those common culprits that can trigger stress, right? One of the biggest sources is definitely the workplace.
Yeah.
All those emails, the tight deadlines, demanding bosses, the modern workplace. Oh, man, it can be like a breeding ground for chronic stress.
Ugh. Tell me about it. I think anyone who's ever had a job can relate to feeling overwhelmed by work. But is it really just about having a ton of stuff to do? Or are there other things going on there?
It's definitely not just about the workload. I mean, that's part of it, but it's more than that. Feeling undervalued or lacking control over your task, or even just facing that constant pressure to perform all those things, they can add up to chronic stress too.
Yeah, it's like feeling trapped, like you're stuck in a situation where you have zero autonomy or influence.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually remember reading somewhere that having a sense of control over your work is like really crucial for managing stress. So, okay, work is a big one.
What about our personal lives? Relationships, they can be pretty stressful too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Relationships, whether it's partners, family, friends, or even just like, difficult people that we have to deal with every day, can be a significant source of stress.
Yeah.
Arguments, misunderstandings, changing dynamics, all of that can take a toll. Like it can really drain your mental and emotional well-being.
And I think sometimes it's not even about like conflict, It's that feeling of not being supported or appreciated, or like you're walking on eggshells all the time. That kind of emotional strain can be just as bad as any big fight.
You're so right. You're totally right. Feeling emotionally unsafe or on edge, in a relationship can be incredibly taxing.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that can keep us up at night, we can't forget about financial stress. I mean, money worries are pretty universal, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure. I think like most of us have experienced that feeling of anxiety when it comes to money. Debt, job insecurity, unexpected expenses, those can really weigh on you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And financial stress, it's complex, right?
Yeah.
It's not always about like how much you actually earn. A lot of it boils down to like your mindset about money, your financial habits, and whether you feel like you're in control or not.
So it's not just about the numbers. It's about like our relationship with money and how we manage it, which makes sense. Okay, so we've got work, relationships, money. We're hitting all the big ones here. But what about health? I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious stressor, right?
It definitely is. Dealing with our own health issues,
Yeah,
or even those of like a loved one, can be incredibly stressful. It just is. The uncertainty, the fear, and then the possibility that things could get worse. It's a lot to deal with emotionally, mentally. It really is.
right. And it's not just the physical symptoms themselves. It's also like that emotional weight, right? Feeling vulnerable, worrying about the future. And I think in some cases, even like facing our own mortality, which is a really big thing.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Those big existential questions, anxieties, those can be some of the hardest to navigate. Yeah. And, on top of all those external stressors, there's also the stress we create for ourselves.
Oh, you mean like that inner critic we all have, that voice in our heads that's like, you're not good enough, you're not doing enough. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Self-imposed stress. perfectionism, those unrealistic expectations, negative self-talk, that stuff can be just as damaging as any kind of external pressure. It's almost like sometimes we are our own worst enemies.
Yeah, it's so true. That constant, like, striving, that pressure to be perfect, it's exhausting and it's self-defeating. So we've covered some really stressful territory here: work, relationships, money, health, and even like our own thoughts. It's kind of a lot, isn't it?
That's a lot to absorb. But you know what? This whole deep dive, it's not about focusing on all the negativity of stress. It's about understanding it, right?
Great.
So you can arm yourself with the tools you need to deal with it effectively. And guess what? This Fluent English podcast episode you sent over, it lays out some really powerful techniques for doing just that.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. I'm ready for the good stuff. So what can we actually do to manage all this stress and regain like a sense of control?
Well, there are quite a few evidence-based techniques, and we'll get into those in the next part. But for now, just know this: you actually have more power over your stress response than you probably realize.
Ooh, intriguing. Let's get into those stress-busting techniques in the final part of this deep dive. Okay, so we've really explored the world of stress, right? What it is, how it affects us, all those things that trigger it.
Yeah.
But now I think it's time for the good stuff. Let's talk about tools, techniques for actually managing this beast. Like, where do we even start?
Well, the Fluent English podcast, the episode that you sent, it highlights a bunch of different approaches. But one that really jumps out is mindfulness and meditation. Have you ever tried meditating?
I have dabbled in meditation. I've tried it, and I know it's supposed to be really good for you. But I gotta be honest, sometimes it feels like just sitting there trying to clear my mind is making me more stressed. Does it actually work, or is it just hype?
It's definitely not hype.
Okay.
And I get your skepticism. I really do. Believe me, I used to feel the same way. But mindfulness and meditation, they're super powerful tools.
Yeah.
Especially when you practice them consistently.
Okay.
So think of mindfulness as like the ability to be totally present.
Yeah.
Right here, right now, without judging yourself.
Okay, yeah.
It's about noticing your thoughts, your feelings.
Yeah.
But not letting them sweep you away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And meditation is a way to cultivate that mindfulness, right?
Exactly.
But does it really do anything to combat those physical and mental effects of stress that we talked about? Does it actually make a difference?
Oh, it absolutely does. Studies have actually shown that meditating regularly, it can lower your cortisol levels.
Wow.
Cortisol, remember, that's that stress hormone we were talking about. So it's like you're hitting the pause button on your stress response.
Right.
And the benefits, they go way beyond just feeling calmer.
Okay.
Meditation can help you focus better, improve your emotional regulation, even boost your immune system. It's amazing.
Wow, that is impressive. Okay, maybe I need to give meditation another try.
You should.
So, mindfulness, meditation check. What else can we do to manage stress?
Another technique that's surprisingly effective is deep breathing.
Oh.
Remember we were talking about that fight-flight response?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you take those deep, slow breaths, you're actually signaling to your body that it's time to relax.
Okay.
It's like you're flipping a switch. You go from panic mode to relaxation mode.
So we're hacking our own nervous systems.
Yeah, basically.
I like that.
It's pretty cool.
But does it really work that easily? Can just changing how we breathe really reduce stress?
You'd be surprised how powerful it is. Even a few minutes of focused deep breathing can really lower your anxiety and stress. And the best part, you can do it anytime, anywhere. No special equipment or fancy gym memberships or anything.
Okay, I'm adding deep breathing to my stress-busting toolkit. This is already making me feel more empowered,
Awesome.
What about exercise? Everyone always says that working out is good for stress.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work?
Exercise is another fantastic tool. It's like a natural stress reliever that works on multiple levels.
Okay.
First, it releases endorphins. Those are like your brain's own feel-good chemicals, so you get a natural high.
Awesome.
Second, it helps you burn off that extra energy, that tension that builds up when you're stressed.
Right.
And third, it improves your sleep quality, which is essential for recovering from stress.
So it's like a triple whammy against stress.
It really is.
Okay. I'm starting to see a theme here. Mindfulness, deep breathing, exercise. It seems like a lot of this is about taking control of our own physiology, like sending our bodies the right signals.
You're totally right. It's about understanding how your body reacts to stress and then using that knowledge to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But don't underestimate the power of managing your external environment as well.
Right. Makes sense. Speaking of our external environment, can we talk about time management for a sec? Because honestly, I feel like a lot of my stress comes from feeling super overwhelmed by my to-do list. It never ends.
You're not alone there. Feeling overwhelmed by like all the things you have to do, that's a major stress trigger for tons of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where time management comes in. Now, I know you're probably thinking, easier said than done.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like there are just not enough hours in the day to get everything done.
I hear you. But the key is to prioritize, to figure out what really matters and what can wait. Can you delegate any tasks? Can you break down big projects into smaller steps? And are you saying yes to things that are just adding unnecessary stress?
Okay, that's helpful. It's about being more intentional with our time and energy. And sometimes it's about setting boundaries, you know? Saying no to protect our well-being.
Exactly. It's not about becoming like a productivity robot. It's about finding a rhythm, a sustainable rhythm that lets you get things done without feeling constantly overwhelmed. But let's talk about something that's often overlooked when it comes to stress management: social support.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more about that. I know when I'm stressed out, sometimes just talking to like a friend or a family member helps me feel a little lighter, you know?
That's because we humans, we're wired for connection. We need to feel supported and understood, especially when things are tough. And sometimes just having someone listen to you without judgment can make a huge difference.
It's like having a release valve, you know, for
Yeah.
all that pent-up stress and emotion.
Exactly. And it's not just about venting. It's also about receiving empathy and validation, maybe even some helpful advice or a different perspective on what you're going through. Remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Reach out to your support network, friends, family, colleagues, even online communities. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that we're stronger together. Okay, so we've got mindfulness, deep breathing, exercise, time management, and social support. That's a pretty good toolkit. Anything else we should add to the list?
One more thing. Don't underestimate the power of a healthy lifestyle.
You mean the basics, like eating well, getting enough sleep, all that good stuff.
Exactly. It might seem super obvious, but taking care of your physical health is crucial for managing stress.
Yeah.
When you have a balanced diet, it gives your body the nutrients it needs to cope with stress. Regular exercise, like we talked about, that's a powerful stress reliever. And getting enough sleep allows your body and your mind to rest and recharge.
Makes sense. I know when I'm sleep deprived, everything just feels 10 times more stressful.
Absolutely. And don't forget to limit your alcohol and caffeine intake. Those can actually make stress and anxiety worse over time.
Right.
It's really about creating this like foundation of well-being that helps you become more resilient to, the inevitable stresses of life.
Yeah, I like that. Creating a foundation of well-being. So we've got all these techniques for managing stress, like in the moment, but is there anything we can do to become more resilient to stress in the long term? I'm thinking about building that like mental armor we were talking about before.
You're thinking like a true deep diver. Building resilience is so important. It's not just about coping with stress, it's about developing those skills and that mindset to bounce back stronger from challenges and even thrive because of them.
Okay, I'm all in on building resilience. Where do we start?
Well, this Fluent English Podcast episode, it mentions a few key elements.
Okay.
One of the most important is cultivating a positive mindset.
Okay, so like thinking positive thoughts. Is that like all it takes?
It's a little more nuanced than that. It's about choosing to focus on solutions instead of dwelling on the problems.
Right.
It's about reframing those challenges, seeing them as opportunities to grow.
Okay.
And even like finding the silver lining in those difficult situations.
So it's not about ignoring the negative. It's about actively looking for the positive, like shifting our perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What else helps build resilience?
Another crucial part is embracing change. Life, it throws us curveballs all the time. And resisting those changes, that just creates more stress and suffering.
I'm so guilty of resisting change. I like things to be predictable.
We all do.
Yeah.
But the truth is, change is inevitable. So resilient people, they learn to adapt, they go with the flow, and they view change as a chance to learn and grow. It's about letting go of that need to control everything and trusting that you can handle whatever comes your way.
That's a huge shift in perspective. Okay, so positive mindset, embracing change. What else helps us build that mental armor?
Something super important, especially when you're facing challenges, is self-compassion.
Okay.
It's about treating yourself with kindness, understanding, and forgiveness, the same way you would treat a good friend.
I think a lot of us are way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
So true. And that inner critic could be brutal, especially when you're already stressed out. Self-compassion is about, silencing that critic, replacing it with a voice of support and encouragement. It's about acknowledging that you're human, you're going to make mistakes, and that you're worthy of love and kindness, especially when times are tough.
Yeah, self-compassion. That's a good one to remember. It's like we're giving ourselves permission to be imperfect and to learn from our mistakes without beating ourselves up about it.
Exactly. Now, another aspect of resilience is setting realistic goals.
Okay, I can see how that ties in. Setting the bar too high, that can lead to disappointment and make you feel like you're always failing.
Right. Resilient people, they set achievable goals, goals that allow them to succeed and build confidence. They break down those big goals into smaller, manageable steps, and they celebrate their progress along the way.
So it's about setting ourselves up for success and acknowledging those wins, even the little ones. I like that. What about setbacks? Are those just like inevitable roadblocks on the path to resilience?
Setbacks, they're totally inevitable.
Yeah.
And honestly, they're crucial to the whole process. The key is to not let those setbacks define you.
Okay.
Resilient people, they view those setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth. They ask, what can I learn from this experience? How can I do better next time?
So it's about turning those failures into valuable lessons that help us grow stronger and become more resilient.
Exactly. It's about adopting a growth mindset, embracing the learning process, and recognizing that even the hardest challenges can ultimately make us more resilient.
This whole concept of resilience is so inspiring. It's not just about coping with stress. It's about using it as fuel to grow and become the best versions of ourselves.
That's what it's all about. Stress, when you manage it well and reframe it as a challenge, can actually be a catalyst for incredible personal transformation.
This deep dive has been amazing, seriously. We've learned that stress is a natural response. It affects us in some really big ways, but we have tools to manage it and even thrive because of it.
It all starts with understanding what stress is, figuring out our triggers, and putting those practical strategies into action.
Right. Mindfulness, deep breathing, exercise, time management, social support, a healthy lifestyle, and of course, building up that resilience. It's a lot to take in, but even just adding one or two of these things into your life can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's about those small steps, being consistent, and most importantly, being kind to yourself along the way.
So, to everyone listening, now that you've learned all this about stress and resilience, What's one small step you can take today to manage stress more effectively? Maybe it's 5 minutes of deep breathing. Maybe it's reaching out to a friend. Or maybe it's just acknowledging your own resilience. Whatever it is, take action and start reclaiming your well-being.
Until next time, embrace the challenge and remember, you got this.